The villagers gathered around the burning house, some whispering in shock, others in silence. Tinashe stood barefoot in the rain, clutching the ashes of her grandmother's will, her inheritance, now nothing but char. Her husband, Menkiti, stood behind the crowd, watching, smiling. Everyone thought she'd break, but they didn't know the fire had awakened something far more powerful than anger, a woman reborn from betrayal. Tinashe was a kind and loving woman who believed deeply in true love. When she met Menkiti, he was charming, sweet, and full of big dreams. He knew all the right words to say and made her feel like the most special woman in the world. Her heart was full of hope, and when he proposed, she didn't hesitate. Even though her grandmother, who had raised her like a mother, had warned her to be careful with Menkiti, Tinashe believed he had changed. She told herself that love was stronger than fear and that her husband would never hurt her. In the beginning, life with Menkiti felt like a fairy tale. He brought her flowers, cooked her favorite meals, and told her every day how lucky he was to have her. Tinashe felt safe and loved, thinking she had made the right choice. She trusted him with everything, her heart, her home, her dreams. She didn't notice the small red flags or the way he sometimes asked too many questions about her grandmother's land and the money she had left behind. But everything started to shift the moment the inheritance was mentioned. Tinashe had just received the official documents confirming that her grandmother had left her a big piece of land and a large amount of money saved secretly for her future. It was her grandmother's final gift, a reward for all the hard work and good heart Tinashe had always shown. When Tinashe told Menkiti about it, expecting him to be happy for her, his face changed. His smile didn't reach his eyes anymore. He started talking about investments and how they could use the money for his business ideas. He said it was their money now and that a wife should support her husband. Tinashe was surprised. She gently explained that her grandmother had given her that inheritance for her own dreams, not to pour into someone else's plans. But Menkiti didn't like that answer. That's when the sweet, loving man she married started to disappear. The compliments became fewer. The warmth in his voice turned cold. Tinashe didn't understand what was happening, but something in her heart told her that the man standing beside her was not the same man she had married. She had trusted him with her life, but now she began to wonder if that trust was a mistake. Still, Tinashe held onto hope. She believed that love could fix things, that maybe Menkiti was just stressed or confused. She didn't know yet that this was only the beginning of a nightmare. She had no idea how far Menkiti would go for that inheritance. But one thing was certain. Her quiet world was about to be shaken in ways she never imagined. Tinashe's heart was still healing from the loss of her grandmother when the lawyer handed her the inheritance documents. Inside was the truth her grandmother had kept secret for years. A large piece of land on the edge of the city and a hidden bank account with a lot of money saved up just for Tinashe. It was her grandmother's final gift, her way of saying, "I believe in your future." Tinashe cried when she saw it. She felt grateful, surprised, and full of hope again. She wanted to use the money to build something meaningful, something her grandmother would be proud of. When she shared the news with Menkiti, she expected him to hug her, to say how proud he was. But instead he paused, then smiled in a strange way. His eyes didn't shine with joy, they shone with something else, greed. The next morning, he brought up the idea of starting a business. "We could invest all of it," he said. "A smart husband knows how to double money. Let me handle it, my love." Tinashe was quiet. She had a feeling deep inside that something wasn't right. She gently told him that her grandmother had left the money for her future, and she wasn't ready to give it away just like that. She said she wanted to think and plan carefully. Menkiti laughed at first, saying, "Don't you trust me?" But when she stood firm, his laughter stopped. Slowly, his true colors started to show. The man who once kissed her forehead now barely looked at her. The man who used to help with cooking now left dirty dishes for her alone. He began calling her selfish, saying she didn't care about their future. He told her she was acting like a child with candy, holding on too tight. Every time she tried to explain, he would twist her words and make her feel guilty. Tinashe felt confused and heartbroken. This was not the man she fell in love with. The warmth in their home began to disappear. Silence filled the space between them, thick and cold. Menkiti became distant, and his smile was no longer real. He only touched her when he wanted to talk about money. He brought up the inheritance again and again, saying things like, "You owe me," and "A good wife supports her husband." But Tinishi remembered her grandmother's voice, always telling her to be wise, to protect her heart and dreams. So she held on. She refused to give in. She didn't yell or fight. She just watched and listened, trying to understand the storm building around her. Little did she know, Menkiti's love had turned into control, and he wasn't done yet, not even close. After Tinishi refused to give Menkiti the inheritance money, things in the house started to change fast. It wasn't just the silence anymore, it was the way Menkiti looked at her, like she was the enemy. At first, he stopped talking to her kindly. Then he started making small comments when her friends came around. "They're jealous of you," he would whisper. "They only want your money." Tinishi didn't want to believe it, but over time, her friends stopped coming by. Some said she had changed. Others stopped replying to her calls. She didn't realize Menkiti had been spreading lies behind her back. He would take her phone when she was asleep. He would read her messages and then delete some before she saw them. He told her not to visit her old neighbors. "You're a married woman now," he'd say. "Stay home and behave like a wife." Little by little, Tinishi's world became smaller. The bright, happy woman who once laughed with friends and dreamed big now sat alone on the couch, scared to even ask to go outside. Menkiti made her feel like she was crazy. When she cried, he called her dramatic. When she tried to explain how she felt, he told her she was ungrateful. "After everything I do for you," he'd say, "this is how you repay me?" Tineshi started to doubt herself. Maybe she was being selfish. Maybe she should have listened to him. She stopped talking about the inheritance. She avoided anything that would make him angry. He started locking her out of decisions. He'd leave for days without telling her where he was going. He kept all the keys, even the one to the storage room where she kept her grandmother's things. One day, when she asked him for the key, he shouted so loudly that she dropped the cup in her hand. It shattered on the floor, and he just walked away. Tineshi became like a ghost in her own home. She cleaned, cooked, and waited. But the love that once filled the house had turned cold. She wasn't living, she was surviving. Every time she looked in the mirror, she saw someone else. Someone tired, someone scared. But even in that darkness, something inside her refused to die. It was small, but it was there. Hope. A quiet voice that told her, "This is not your end." She didn't know when or how, but deep down, she believed a day would come when she'd be free again. Until then, she kept her head down and her spirit alive, waiting for the moment to rise. That night, the rain was heavy. Tinishi had rushed to the hospital to visit her friend who had just given birth. She didn't know that while she was gone, something terrible was about to happen. The house she had once called home, filled with her memories and her grandmother's love, was burning to the ground. Neighbors said the fire started suddenly, and by the time they noticed the smoke, it was too late. The flames grew fast, eating through the roof and walls. People ran with buckets of water, but it didn't help. Everything was lost. Tineshi's clothes, her grandmother's old chest, family pictures, and even the papers for the land and inheritance, all turned to ash. When she arrived, her feet soaked from the rain, she couldn't believe what she saw. The fire was out, but the damage was done. The house stood like a skeleton, black and broken. Tineshi stood there in silence, tears mixing with the rain on her face. Menkiti came to her side, pretending to be worried. He said it was a terrible accident, that the electric wires must have caused it. He even showed her the fire report he had filed, which said the same. At first, Tineshi believed him. She was too shocked to think, but something inside her didn't feel right. The way Menkiti stood there, too calm. The way he didn't seem sad about losing the house. Days passed, and while staying at a neighbor's place, Tineshi began to feel uneasy. Why didn't Menkiti cry over anything? Why did he seem so free? One afternoon, he asked her to grab something from his car. As she opened the glove compartment, looking for the papers he mentioned, her fingers touched something odd. A lighter. It looked new. It wasn't hers, and she knew Menkiti didn't smoke. Her heart raced. She looked around the car. There was also a torn piece of cloth, part of her old curtain, smelling of fuel. She sat back, trembling. Everything started to make sense. Menkiti had set the fire on purpose to destroy everything that was hers, to erase the will, the documents, the memories. so he could control her completely. He had burned her home and blamed it on bad wires, and now he was pretending to care. Tineshi didn't scream. She didn't confront him. She just closed the glove box quietly and walked away. That moment changed everything. Something inside her broke, but something else was born. A new strength, a quiet decision. If he thought the fire would finish her, he was wrong. He had just lit the beginning of her comeback, and this time, she would rise from the ashes stronger than ever before. After the fire, Tineshi had nothing left. No home, no clothes, no documents. Everything had burned. But the worst part was knowing that her own husband Menkiti had done it. The man she trusted, the man she loved, had tried to destroy her completely. Most people would have broken down, but not Tineshi. With nowhere to go, she found a small church nearby. The kind pastor allowed her to sleep in the back hall, where the choir kept their robes. It was cold at night, and sometimes she cried silently, wrapping herself in a thin blanket. But every morning, she got up early and cleaned the church without anyone asking her to. It gave her peace, something to hold on to. One day the pastor noticed her dedication and offered her a small job, cleaning the church and helping with small tasks. The money was not much, but Tineshi took it with a thankful heart. She used part of it to buy food, and the rest she saved in a small jar she kept under her pillow. At night, when she was not too tired, Tineshi sat with a needle and thread, making small crafts from old clothes, bracelets, bags, even little dolls. Her grandmother had taught her how to sew when she was a child. It brought back memories and strength. She took pictures of her work, using an old phone a church member had gifted her, and she started posting them online. Slowly, people began to notice her beautiful handmade items. A woman from the city messaged her, asking to buy some bracelets. Then another wanted a set of small bags for a gift. Bit by bit, orders started coming in. Tineshi worked hard, sometimes sewing by candlelight, determined to fulfill every request. She didn't complain. She didn't ask anyone for help. She was building something quietly with her own hands. Every coin she earned, she saved. She even made her own packaging, wrapping her items with handwritten thank you notes. Customers loved her honesty and her story, and they kept coming back. Tineshi didn't have fancy clothes or a big place to live, but she had something more powerful, hope. She refused to give up. Even when some nights she went to bed hungry, she reminded herself that she was free, free from lies, free from Menkiti's control, and she was building her future, one small step at a time. Many would have fallen after losing everything, but Tineshi stood tall in her pain. Rock bottom didn't break her. It became the ground she stood on to rise. She was no longer the woman who cried over what she lost. She was becoming the woman who would one day own more than anyone ever expected. One quiet afternoon, after finishing her cleaning work at the church, Tineshi decided to visit a small storage room at the back of the burnt house, one the fire hadn't completely destroyed. It was risky, but something in her heart pulled her there. She carefully stepped over the blackened wood and broken glass until she found it, her grandmother's old wooden chest, burnt on the outside but still sealed tight. With shaking hands, she carried it back to the church hall. That night, when everyone was asleep, she opened the chest. Inside were old family pictures, faded letters, and a tiny wrapped parcel hidden under the lining. She gently unwrapped it. Her breath caught. It was a land deed, real, official, and signed in her grandmother's handwriting. The land was in the city, prime location, something she didn't even know her grandmother owned. At first, she couldn't believe it. Her heart raced as she searched online using an old phone. When she typed in the location, her eyes widened. The land was now in a commercial area, surrounded by banks, offices, and high-end stores. It was worth millions. Tineshi sat there in silence, her hands covering her mouth. It felt like her grandmother had reached out from the grave to bless her. She knew she couldn't tell anyone yet, not even the kind people at the church. Not until she had everything in order. Quietly, carefully, she made calls, found a lawyer through a trusted friend, and verified the documents. It was all real. 100% hers. She moved quickly but silently. Through her lawyer, she contacted a group of investors. They were shocked at how valuable the land was. One made an offer on the spot. She didn't rush. She listened, she learned, and she finally agreed to a deal that would not only make her a millionaire, but give her full control of the process. When the money arrived in her account, Tineshi didn't scream or dance. She simply smiled. tears rolling down her face. She had nothing just weeks ago. Now she had more than Menkiti ever dreamed of, but she didn't tell him. She didn't tell anyone. Instead, she began her rebirth quietly. She moved out of the church hall and rented a small apartment under a different name. She bought better tools for her crafts, hired a designer to improve her online store, and began to build a real business. Still handmade, still hers, but bigger. No one saw it coming. While Menkiti still walked around the village like a proud man, thinking he had destroyed her, Tinashe was already rising in secret. Her grandmother's gift wasn't just the land, it was strength, it was legacy, it was a reminder that no matter how low life brings you, there is always something left, some hidden spark waiting to be found. Tinashe didn't rush. She moved with quiet purpose. After selling the city land and securing her millions, she took her time to plan her next steps. One morning, she wore simple clothes, tied her hair in a scarf, and walked into a well-known architect's office. Nobody recognized her. She spoke calmly and confidently, using her maiden name. No one needed to know about Menkiti. That chapter was closed. She sat across the architect and pulled out a rough drawing she had made in her small apartment. "I want to build this," she said. "A mansion with my dream garden and strong gates. A place that feels like peace." The architect looked at her sketch, surprised by the details. "Do you want it small or grand?" "Grand," Tinashe smiled softly. "Very grand." Construction began within weeks. On the same piece of land that Menkiti once called useless, bricks were laid. Workers came every day, unaware that the quiet woman who visited in plain clothes was the owner. She watched them from a distance, wearing sunglasses and a large hat. She didn't want attention. She just wanted to rebuild, slowly and surely. While the mansion grew, so did her business. Using a different name and new contacts, she began investing in properties, small ones at first, shops, flats, then office spaces. She didn't show off. She just worked, signed papers, and made smart moves. People thought the company was owned by a powerful woman they had never met, and they were right. It was her. Her online craft store also exploded. With the new tools she bought and a team of quiet workers she hired from the church, her handmade goods reached international buyers. Orders came in from different countries. She registered the business under her maiden name. Not once did she think about sharing her success with the man who betrayed her. Brick by brick, her life was changing. Her mansion was finally complete. Tall gates, shining windows, white walls, and golden lights. A wide driveway led to a house that looked like royalty lived there. It wasn't just a house. It was proof. Proof that betrayal didn't break her. Proof that a woman could fall, lose everything, and still rise, stronger, richer, and smarter. People in the city started whispering about the mysterious woman behind the beautiful mansion. Menkiti, still in the village, had no idea she was the one. He believed she was suffering, still crying over her burnt home. If only he knew. But Tinashe didn't care. She had no time for revenge games or useless gossip. She was too busy building, too busy living. Every brick, every deal, every flower in her garden reminded her she did this, on her own, with her name, her pain, and her strength. And no one, not even Menkiti, could take that from her. It was a sunny afternoon, and everything around the mansion was calm and beautiful. The flowers were blooming, the fountain gently splashing water, and the wind danced through the trees. Tinashe sat in her garden, sipping tea, dressed in a flowing gold kaftan that shimmered in the sunlight. Her face was peaceful. She had everything she needed: her home, her business, her freedom. At the gate, a man stood in shock. It was Menkiti. His clothes were dirty, his face thin and tired. Life had not been kind to him. His business had collapsed, and the mistress he left Tinashe for had thrown him out. He had nothing left, not money, not respect, not even a place to stay. He had heard whispers in the village about a powerful woman who built a mansion in the city. He never imagined it was Tinashe. When he saw the house, his heart dropped. His legs became weak. He walked slowly through the open gate, eyes wide with disbelief. Then she came out. Tinashe didn't rush. She walked with quiet power, her golden outfit flowing like royalty. Her skin glowed. Her eyes were calm. She looked like a queen who had survived the fire, the pain, the betrayal, and had risen. Menkiti dropped to his knees, right there, on the smooth tiles of the driveway. "Tinashe, please," he whispered, his voice shaking. "I made a mistake. I didn't know what I had. Please forgive me. She looked at him for a long moment, not with hate, not even with anger, just silence. Mistake? She said softly. You burned down my house. You left me homeless. You called me selfish when I wouldn't give you money. You told people I was crazy, Menkiti cried, actual tears. I was stupid. I lost everything. I deserve nothing. But please, give me one more chance. Tinashi looked down at him. This was the same man who had once laughed as she stood barefoot in the rain, watching her home burn. Now he was kneeling, dirty and desperate. She took a deep breath. You were right about one thing, she said. You deserve nothing. Then she turned, walked back into her mansion, and closed the door. The gates shut behind her. Menkiti stayed on his knees for a while, staring at the place he once said was impossible, the house she built with the same strength he tried to crush. Inside, Tinashe smiled gently, not out of pride, but peace. She had won, not with revenge, but by rising. And the world would never forget the day the woman he burned walked out in gold, and he fell to his knees. Tinashe opened the door slowly. Menkiti was still standing outside, looking shocked, broken, and unsure of what to expect. When she looked into his eyes, there was no love left, just a quiet strength that came from everything she had survived. Without saying a word, she stepped aside and signaled for him to come in. He followed her, confused and still hoping for forgiveness, maybe even a second chance. Inside, the mansion was even more beautiful. Marble floors, golden lights, elegant furniture. Everything looked like it belonged in a dream. Menkiti looked around in disbelief. He could barely recognize the woman he once tried to destroy. She was confident, graceful, and powerful. This was not the same Tinashe who used to beg for his love. This was a woman who had risen from pain and turned it into something golden. Tinashe led him into a quiet room. On a shiny glass table sat a pen and some documents. She picked them up and handed them to him. You're not here to stay, she said softly. You're here to end what should have ended a long time ago. Menkiti looked down. Divorce papers. His hands shook. Tinashe, please, you don't have to do this. We can fix things. I can change. She smiled gently, but it wasn't the smile he remembered. It wasn't the smile of a woman in love. It was the smile of a woman who had learned. No, Menkiti, she replied. You had your chance. You burned it, just like you burned our home. He looked away, ashamed. He had no words. Tinashe sat down and signed her part of the papers. Then she passed them to him. As he slowly began to sign, she said one last thing that hit him like thunder. This mansion, it was built from the ashes you left behind. You tried to destroy me, but instead, you pushed me to become stronger. I'm no longer your wife, Menkiti. I'm your lesson. Silence filled the room. Menkiti couldn't even look at her. He signed the papers, knowing he had lost the only real thing he ever had. Tinashe stood up, walked him to the door, and opened it. No shouting, no drama, just peace. As Menkiti walked out, head down, she whispered, goodbye. And with that, she closed the door. Tinashe leaned against it for a moment, breathing in deeply, not with sadness, but with relief. It was over. She was finally free, not just from the marriage, but from the pain, the control, the lies. She didn't just survive. She rebuilt, she rose, and she made sure the one who tried to break her would never forget her strength. From that day, the world didn't call her Menkiti's ex-wife. They called her the woman who turned fire into gold. Tinashe stood on a brightly lit stage, dressed in royal blue, her head held high. Cameras flashed and people clapped, not just for her beauty, but for her bravery. The same woman who once slept on a cold church floor now had the whole nation watching her with respect and admiration. But this moment wasn't about showing off her wealth or power. It was about giving back. After everything she had gone through, Tinashe made a promise to herself. No woman should ever feel as alone and helpless as she once did. So, she started a foundation, the Ashes to Gold Foundation. It was created to help women who had been abused, abandoned, or broken. She used her own money to build shelters, offer training, and provide legal help for women escaping painful situations. Word spread fast. Women from villages, towns, and cities came to her, not just for help, but for hope. Some came with children. Some came with nothing but the clothes on their backs. And Tinashe welcomed every single one of them with love. She listened to their stories, cried with them, and then helped them rise again. The media covered her journey. People who once pitied her now called her a warrior. Celebrities, business leaders, and even politicians praised her. She's not just a survivor, one news anchor said. She's a queen. Tinashe didn't care about the titles. She smiled when people called her Queen Tinashe. But what truly mattered to her were the lives she touched. Every time a woman opened her own shop, returned to school, or smiled again after years of pain, that was her real crown. She held workshops where she taught women how to make handmade crafts, just like the ones she sold during her lowest days. She showed them how to turn their pain into purpose. Every speech she gave ended with the same words. You are not weak. You are just beginning. Let's rise together. Even Menkiti, from a distance, saw the billboards and news stories. The woman he once tried to break was now loved by millions. His name was forgotten, but hers was written in hearts across the country. Tinashe's foundation grew. Soon, there were centers in every major city. Her mansion, once a symbol of personal victory, became a headquarters of healing and change. She had truly become more than just a survivor. She became a symbol, a reminder that no matter how bad things get, a woman who refuses to stay down will always rise, and when she does, the world will rise with her. That is how Tinashe, the woman once left in the rain, became the queen in every storm.